This video ranks every viable Town Hall 15 attack strategy. So if you want to win more 3 stars, you need to know the best armies for any base and the worst armies to avoid them. And this tier list is based on 3 things: strength, ease of use, and flexibility. Starting in the F tier, these are the worst of the worst strategies, mainly the Super GoWipe, the Yeti Smash, and the Pekka Smash. There's nothing else to say other than that. Now we move up into the D tier. These are some okay armies, starting with the Super Archer Blimp Hydra. Now, as someone who has personally used this strategy, it is really not that good, because without the Grand Warden, the Hydra really struggles, but otherwise, it's not really that good of an army. Next up in the D tier, we have the Blizzard Hydra. Of course, the Blizzard is still viable at Town Hall 15, even after the Blimp change, but Hydra with it is not really something that I would prefer. There are just much better armies than Hydra in general that you're going to find out very soon as we go through this video. Next, we move into the C tier. Some of these armies are quite good, they are just a little bit too base dependent. Starting with the Skelly Donut Lalo. Now, the Skelly Donut Lalo is really strong, but what does put it this low is due to the not as easy to use for a beginner, and it is really base dependent since you're looking for very specific things on the base. It's going to take a lot of time to master, but just enough time for you to subscribe and ring the bell. Next in the C tier, we have the Queen Charge Recall Dragons. Now, these type of strategies are very strong. I would include the Electro Dragon and Super Dragons into this, but this really only works against 2 kinds of bases: box bases and diamond bases. Otherwise, they're kind of beginner friendly, though you really need to understand the Queen Charge and when to recall, which is why it is going to be in the C tier. And next up in the C tier, we have got the Hydra with a clone spell. Now, this is similar to any Hydra army, however, the only difference is you are using cloned up balloons. Typically, 1 or 2 clone spells are going to be chosen, so you can actually have space for other spells. A bit more base specific, but can work pretty well, and it is pretty easy to understand, so I would definitely put it as a fairly beginner friendly army. It's just not nearly as strong as other strategies we have, and of course it is a little bit more base dependent. Now we're moving up into the B tier armies. These are some good armies that you can use, starting with the Super Bowler Smash. Now, Super Bowlers are still good. I just wouldn't consider them to be the very best anymore, since the amount of damage that there is at Town Hall 15 is not forgiving. It's just not as strong as it once was, but it's still fairly strong. Of course, it's going to be a little bit more base dependent at Town Hall 15, but it is still a little bit more beginner friendly than before. Next up in the B tier is the Zap Lalo. With the Zap Lalo, thanks to the level increase for the lightning spell, it is still a pretty solid option. It's still going to vary depending on the base. Other than that, it's still a fairly average Lalo for above average players. It can be pretty dang strong. It's just going to be a little bit more base specific, similar to that of the Super Bowlers. Next up in the B tier is the Super Archer Blimp Titans. Now, as someone who has used the Super Archer Blimp Titans a lot, it's a pretty alright strategy. It does work on a decent few amount of bases, specifically being ring bases. It's definitely very easy to use. It's just the flexibility and the strength is really going to depend on the base and the spell towers. Next up in the B tier is the Inferno Dragons skeleton spell strategy. Now, this might be a surprise in B tier, but it's honestly a strategy thanks to the new level to the Inferno Dragon and the skeleton spell. It does make it a little bit better to use. Of course, it's still going to be a little bit more base dependent, and the strength is really going to depend on the base and any mistakes that you make, but otherwise, it's still a fairly easy strategy to use if you're new to Town Hall 15. And, of course, in the B tier, we have the Super Witch Smash. Now, I bet you weren't expecting Super Witches. Well, they're starting to become a little bit more popular thanks to the Apprentice Warden. What's really important about them is that they are quite strong, but they are very base specific. They're mainly looking for at least anti 3-star bases or just poorly designed bases. However, as long as you know a smash attack, this is a pretty easy to use army. Now we're moving into some of the better strategies you can use in the A tier, starting with the Queen Charge Lalo. This strategy needs no introduction. It's pretty dang strong. It can work really well on a wide variety of bases and with a wide variety of siege machines. It's just not super beginner friendly, but it's still up there as long as you know how to use a Queen Charge and you know what you're getting. Next up in the A tier, we have the Edrags with the Super Minion Blimp. Edrags with the use of a Super Minion Blimp are not only very beginner friendly and very strong, and while it is going to be a little bit more base dependent, it is still an incredibly good strategy to try out and learn, as it is very good. Edrags at Town Hall 15 all across the board still are very, very easy to apply on different bases and still very strong. Next up in the A tier is both the Super Barch and Super Archer Blimp Rocket Loons. Now, these are two strategies I'd highly recommend learning, since not only can you take it from personal experience from me, but they are just very fun, very flexible, and they definitely can be used on a wide variety of bases. They're very beginner friendly, since realistically, the Super Archers are clearing a majority of the base, and then the rest of your army is heroes and either the Rocket Loons or the Super Barbarians in their own strategies. Next up is the Super Archer Blimp Lalo. The Super Archer Blimp Lalo is still a fairly good army, and while I wouldn't recommend it on a wide variety of bases, it's still very strong. It can work on a decent number of bases, and it does have a little bit of ease of use, considering you're going to be able to get a wide amount of defenses with the Super Archer Blimp before you even send in your heroes. Another strategy in the A tier is the Queen Charge Hybrid. Now, the Queen Charge Hybrid is still an incredibly strong army and only got stronger thanks to all the stuff that changed in this recent update. With that being said, it can be very strong, a little bit more flexible than other armies, but not as flexible as the Queen Charge Lalo, and of course, it can be beginner friendly as long as you know what you're doing with the Hybrid. And within the A tier, we also have the return of Super Dragons. Super Dragons are making a comeback thanks to the new level to the Dragons. They're not only very beginner friendly, they're very strong, and they are slightly more base dependent than most other armies. And if I were you, I'd heavily recommend using this with the Super Minion Blimp. They are going to be pretty dang strong. Now we move into the best of the best strategies that you need to use, starting with the Zap Titans in the S tier. It's no surprise to why Zap Titans are even in the S tier. They're just very flexible, very beginner friendly. It works on so many bases. It's so strong on them, and since really anyone can get into using this strategy, it's honestly by far one of the greatest for Town Hall 15. Now, two armies that are quite similar that are moving into the S tier is both the Queen Charge Hogs and the Queen Charge Super Hogs. Both of these troops can be used together or separated, but they're both incredibly powerful. Super Hogs and regular Hogs have just had a field day in this current meta of the game for Town Hall 15. Hogs are very flexible right now, and you actually don't even need heal in some situations, especially if you're using the Super Hogs. Other than that, it is pretty beginner friendly, so a lot of people can get into this army. It's very strong and very flexible. And of course, a strategy that's still very good is the Blizzard Lalo. The Blizzard Lalo is still an S tier army. It is still extremely strong, it's extremely versatile, and it is still very beginner friendly. It's a strategy that I would always still recommend even after the Blimp change. As with rigorous testing, as long as you have scout troops like goblins, they can activate those traps just a bit before most of the super wizards come out, making them still very, very good. Not only that, but this is way better for war and regular multiplayer than it is for Legends League. So it's a very good army that I would heavily recommend trying out still. And that is every single viable Town Hall 15 strategy. I hope that this tier list will help you find the best strategy for you at Town Hall 15. If you have a Town Hall 14 by chance, check out this video ranking every strategy, and I will see you there.